The chamber was built to make visitors feel small. It hung in the void between dying stars, a cathedral of crystal and light, stretching across distances that human minds struggled to comprehend. 17 kilometers of seats rose in endless tiers, each one occupied by beings so alien that looking at some of them too long caused the eyes to water and the mind to protest. 2,416 species had earned representation in the Galactic Council. Today, every single seat was filled. Ambassador Marcus Thorne stood alone on the petitioner's platform. The platform was a disk of polished black stone, barely 3 meters wide, floating without visible support at the exact center of this impossible amphitheater. Behind him, visible through walls of transparent crystal, Earth's diplomatic vessel waited in the designated holding zone. The ship was called the Meridian, and it was roughly the size of a commercial aircraft. Compared to the warships of the assembled empires, it looked like a child's toy. Marcus was 53 years old. His gray hair was cut short, his posture straight, despite the weight of what he carried. He wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, without medals or decoration. He looked exactly like what the galaxy expected, a representative of a primitive species, out of his depth, waiting to hear his fate. The council's speaker rose from the central platform. Its name was Valith, and it was a being of living liquid metal, silver and flowing, constantly shifting between forms. When it spoke, translation devices carried its words to every corner of the chamber in 17,000 languages simultaneously. Species designation: human. Origin world: Earth. Soul system: outer spiral arm. You have been granted audience to answer for your crimes against the hegemony of the triumvirate stars. Marcus did not move. He did not speak. He simply listened. From the upper galleries, laughter began. It started with the Kathrani delegation, serpentine beings whose bodies coiled and twisted with amusement. The sound spread quickly to the Morvakian representatives, creatures of living stone and fire, who found genuine entertainment in watching a single human face the judgment of empires. Within seconds, the entire chamber echoed with mockery in 1,000 different forms. Valith waited for the noise to subside before continuing. The accused species has existed in spacefaring capacity for merely 112 standard rotations. They possess no significant military assets. Their technology registers at classification 3 on the developmental index, which places them approximately 4,000 years behind the galactic average. More laughter. The triumvirate's own delegation pulsed with satisfaction. They were 3 interconnected hive minds, each one occupying a body of crystalline structure that glowed from within. Their light grew brighter with each word that diminished humanity. The humans have been brought before this council, Valith continued, because they dared to interfere with the triumvirate's lawful harvest of the Kello system. This interference resulted in the damage of triumvirate property and the disruption of sacred economic activities. Sacred economic activities. Marcus had read enough galactic law to know what those words actually meant. The Kello system contained 3 inhabited worlds, home to a species called the Venari, who had not yet developed spaceflight. They had cities and art and music and dreams. They also had resources the triumvirate wanted. The harvest would have stripped those worlds bare. The Venari would have been processed along with everything else. The accused may not speak until the formal charges are complete, Valith announced. Interruption of these proceedings will be considered. The charges are incomplete, Marcus said. His voice was calm. Not loud, but somehow it carried through the sudden silence that crashed across the chamber like a physical force. Dromon Vass, the senior military commander of the Morvakian Empire, rose to his full height of 9 meters. Fire burned behind his stone eyes. You interrupted the speaker. Do you understand that this alone could justify your species' immediate extinction? Marcus looked up at the massive being without flinching. "The charges are incomplete because you haven't mentioned what actually happened to the Triumvirate's flagship." The 3 crystalline bodies of the Triumvirate delegation pulsed with sudden agitation. The change was subtle, but thousands of watching delegates noticed. Whispers began to spread through the galleries. The Eternal Dominion was damaged in the engagement. The Triumvirate spoke in unison, their voices like shattering glass. "It is being repaired. This changes nothing about your guilt." "No," Marcus said. "The Eternal Dominion wasn't damaged. It was destroyed, completely, by my ship, which is 1/10 its size and carries no weapon systems that any of you recognize." The whispers grew louder. The Eternal Dominion was legend. 400 kilometers long, carrying weapons that could crack planets, crewed by millions. It had served the Triumvirate for 11,000 years without ever suffering defeat. Marcus reached slowly into his pocket. Every security system in the chamber activated instantly. Weapons from 900 different species targeted him from every angle. One wrong movement would mean instant death. He pulled out a small crystal, barely larger than his thumb. "Relax," he said. "It's just a data storage device. I'm transmitting a recording to every delegation present. Before you decide humanity's fate, you should see what we're actually capable of." He pressed the crystal's activation point dot at the center of the chamber. A holographic display flickered to life. The image showed a region of space, the Kello system, with its 3 inhabited worlds gleaming like jewels. A massive shadow emerged from the darkness at the edge of the display. The Eternal Dominion, even as a hologram, it was terrifying. The warship filled the display like a mechanical mountain, its hull bristling with weapons that could have annihilated every human settlement with a single volley. Beside it, the Meridian appeared as a speck, insignificant, laughable. "This recording was taken 18 standard days ago," Marcus said. "What you are about to see has been verified by independent analysis. It has not been altered or enhanced." On the display, the Meridian broadcast a signal. The translation appeared as text alongside the image. "Triumvirate vessel, you are ordered to withdraw from this system. The inhabitants of Kellos Prime are under Earth's protection." The laughter that erupted from the Eternal Dominion's communication channel was the same. Laughter that had filled this chamber moments. "Go, confident, contemptuous, certain. We're receiving weapons lock," a voice reported. From the Meridian's bridge, the ship's captain, a woman named Elena Vasquez, appeared briefly in the recording. Her face was calm, almost serene. "Initiate Protocol 7, she said. What happened next lasted less than 3 seconds. The Meridian emitted a pulse of energy that the recording equipment could barely capture. It didn't register on any known spectrum. There was no visible beam, no explosion, no flash of destructive power. The Eternal Dominion simply came apart, not in pieces, not in flames. The 400-kilometer warship dissolved as if it had never been solid at all, its atoms losing cohesion simultaneously across its entire impossible length. One moment it was the most powerful vessel in the galaxy. The next moment it was dust, spreading into the void. The hologram froze on that image. Dust where a mountain had been. In the council chamber, no one was laughing anymore. Velith's liquid form had gone completely still, frozen in mid-flow. "What?" the speaker asked slowly. "Did we just witness?" Marcus Thorne clasped his hands behind his back. He looked up at the assembled might of galactic civilization. Trillions of beings, represented by thousands of delegates, backed by fleets that could darken stars. They had summoned humanity here to pass judgment. They had expected fear, submission, desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, they saw a man who was smiling. "We call it resonance disruption," Marcus said. "Every material in the universe has a natural frequency. Find it, amplify it correctly, and you can shake apart the bonds that hold matter together. The Eternal Dominion wasn't destroyed by a weapon you understand. It was dissolved, unmade, returned to the atoms it was built from. He paused, letting his words settle into the horrified silence. And before you ask, he continued, yes, we can do this to any ship, any station, any structure, anywhere. The Morvakian commander's fires had dimmed. The Kethrani had stopped moving entirely. The Triumvirate's light flickered with something that might have been fear. Humanity came to this chamber expecting diplomacy, Marcus said. We were prepared to negotiate, to find peaceful solutions, to integrate ourselves into your galactic community as respectful newcomers. He gestured at the frozen hologram, at the dust that had been the mightiest warship ever built, but we also came prepared for the alternative. The chamber erupted into chaos. The chaos lasted for 7 minutes. Delegates shouted in languages that had no human equivalent. Some species fled their seats, rushing toward exits that sealed themselves automatically under emergency protocols. Others surged forward, demanding answers, threatening violence, calling for immediate military response. The Morvakian commander's flames burned so hot that delegates in nearby sections had to shield themselves from the heat. Through it all, Marcus Thorne stood motionless on the petitioner's platform. Valeth finally restored order by releasing a pulse of energy that dimmed every light in the chamber simultaneously. In the sudden darkness, the speaker's voice cut through like a blade. Silence. You will be silent, or you will be removed. The lights returned. The delegates settled, though the tension in the chamber had become something almost physical. Ambassador Thorne, Valeth said, and there was a new quality in its voice now, something that had not been there before. You will explain further. How did humanity develop this technology? When? And most importantly, how many of your vessels carry it? Marcus had prepared for this moment for 3 years. Every word had been calculated. The technology evolved from research we began after our first contact with galactic civilization. When the Hegemony scout ship crashed in our northern territories 15 years ago, we recovered certain materials that we did not understand. The Hegemony does not share its technology with primitive species, hissed the Hegemony's representative, a being of shadow and sharp angles. Whatever you found, you could not have understood it. You're correct, Marcus said. We didn't understand it. Not immediately. But we studied it. For 15 years, our best scientists worked to comprehend what we had found. And during that study, we discovered something interesting. He let the pause stretch just long enough. Your technology is advanced, but it's also limited. Every species in this chamber has developed along similar paths. Faster than light travel, energy weapons, shield harmonics. You've all reached roughly the same destination through roughly the same route. And because of this, you all have the same blind spots. Admiral Korvath, the Morvakian military commander, leaned forward. What blind spots? Resonance theory, Marcus said. The study of fundamental frequencies in matter and energy. Your civilizations abandoned that research thousands of years ago because it didn't seem useful. It couldn't make ships go faster or weapons hit harder. So you moved on to other things and forgot it existed. He gestured at the hologram, which still showed the dust cloud that had been the Eternal Dominion. Humanity had no such history. We came to this research without preconceptions. We explored every path, including the ones you had abandoned. And we found something you missed. Impossible, the Triumvirate spoke together. Our science is 11,000 years more advanced than yours. We would have discovered any useful application of resonance theory. You didn't, Marcus said simply. Because you weren't looking. Because you had decided thousands of years ago that some paths weren't worth following. Humanity made no such decisions. We followed every path we could find. The chamber absorbed this in silence. The implications were enormous. If humanity had found one thing the galaxy had missed, what else might they have discovered? What other forgotten paths had they explored? This still does not answer my question, Bailiff said. How many of your vessels carry this weapon? Marcus met the speaker's shifting gaze directly. All of them. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. That is impossible, Admiral Korvath growled. We have monitored your shipyards. We have surveillance throughout your system. We have seen nothing that would indicate weapons development on that scale. Your surveillance was looking for weapons, Marcus said. Large installations. Power signatures. The things that your weapons require. But resonance emitters are small. They require almost no power. They look like ordinary communication equipment. He paused. We've been installing them as standard components in every ship we've built for 8 years. Air Watchers never noticed because they didn't know what to look for. He took a step forward on the platform, and the movement somehow commanded the attention of every being in the chamber. I should also mention that we know exactly where your surveillance devices are. All of them. We've been feeding them carefully selected information since the day they were installed. Your intelligence on humanity is exactly what we wanted you to believe. The implications crashed through the chamber like waves. For 8 years, humanity had been preparing. For 8 years, they had hidden their true capabilities behind a mask of primitive simplicity. For 8 years, the galaxy's greatest empires had been watching shadows while humanity built something unprecedented. Why? The question came from an unexpected source. Thessaly, the lead diplomat from the Kethrani Consortium, had risen from her seat. Her serpentine body coiled with genuine curiosity rather than hostility. Why reveal this now? You could have kept your secret. You could have remained invisible. Marcus turned to face her. Because of Kelos Prime. Because of the Venery. A primitive species, the triumvirate said dismissively. Pre-spaceflight. Of no significance. 3 billion people, Marcus replied, and his voice carried an edge now. Artists and farmers and children and dreamers. They had never harmed anyone. They had never threatened anyone. And you were going to process them like raw materials because they happened to live on worlds you wanted. This is the natural order, Admiral Korvath said. The strong consume the weak. This is how civilizations grow. This is how empires are built. Not anymore. The words were quiet, but they silenced the chamber more effectively than any shout. Humanity has spent the last 15 years learning about galactic civilization, Marcus said. We've studied your histories, your wars, your rise and fall of empires. And we've noticed a pattern. Every major power in this galaxy achieved its position through conquest, through exploitation, through the elimination of species that might become rivals. You call it the natural order, but it's not natural at all. It's just the only order you've ever known. He turned slowly, addressing the entire chamber. We came to the stars hoping to find wisdom. Instead, we found a galaxy ruled by predators. So we had a choice. We could submit and wait to be harvested like the Venari. We could try to become predators ourselves and join the cycle of conquest. Or we could try something different. And what is that? Thessaly asked. We could refuse, Marcus said. We could say that the old rules don't apply to us. We could protect those who cannot protect themselves, not for power or tribute, but because it's the right thing to do. Laughter erupted from the Morvakian section, but it was nervous now, uncertain. You think one species can change the nature of galactic civilization? You think your little weapon frightens us? I think, Marcus said slowly, that you're about to find out. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the chamber. The crystalline walls flickered with emergency displays. showing a tactical map of the space surrounding the Council Station. 3. Morvakian battlecruisers had just emerged from hyperspace. Weapons charged, heading directly toward the Meridian. Admiral Korvath smiled, and flames danced behind his stone teeth. Did you really think we would let you leave here with that technology? Did you think we would allow humanity to exist as a threat to our empire? Marcus looked at the tactical display. He looked at the Admiral's triumphant expression, and then he smiled back. I was wondering when you would do something stupid, he said. He touched a communication device on his wrist. Captain Vasquez, are you receiving this? Elena's voice came through clearly, transmitted to every delegation in the chamber. Receiving, Ambassador. We have 3 contacts approaching on attack vectors. Orders? Marcus looked at the Admiral one more time. What are your rules of engagement, Admiral? Are your ships planning to capture us or destroy us? Capture, Korvath growled. We will take your technology and use it to ensure Morvakian dominance for 10,000 years. I see. Marcus nodded slowly. Captain Vasquez, you heard the Admiral. They intend to capture us. What do you think we should do about that? There was a pause. Then Elena's voice returned, calm and almost amused. I think we should teach them why that's a bad idea, Ambassador. Marcus smiled. I agree. Protocol 8, Captain. Show them what we can really do. On the tactical display, the Meridian began to move. The 3 battlecruisers had no idea what was about to happen. The Meridian was a diplomatic vessel, built for comfort and communication rather than combat. It had no visible weapons, no heavy armor, no military systems that any scanner in the galaxy could detect. Against 3 Morvakian battle cruisers, each one carrying enough firepower to glass a continent. It should have been helpless. Every delegate in the council chamber watched the tactical display with absolute attention. The lead Morvakian cruiser, a vessel called the Burning Fist, opened fire first. Plasma lances that burned at temperatures matching stellar cores streaked across the void. Any normal ship would have been vaporized instantly. The Meridian simply moved, not dodged, not evaded. It moved in ways that should have been impossible for any vessel its size, sliding between the plasma streams as if they were standing still. The ship's trajectory made no sense to eyes accustomed to normal physics. It seemed to know where the shots would be before they were fired. Predictive maneuvering, Marcus said, his voice calm even as the chamber held its collective BR. Eve, another thing we developed while you weren't watching. Our computers can calculate weapon trajectories before the weapons are even charged. We see your attacks coming before you decide to make them. The Burning Fist adjusted its aim and fired again. And again. Each shot missed by margins that seemed impossibly thin. The Meridian danced through a storm of fire that should have destroyed it 100 times over, and then it fired back. There was no visible beam, no missile, no flash of energy. The Meridian simply pulsed once, and the Burning Fist's engines went dark. What did you do? Admiral Korvath demanded. His flames had dimmed with something that looked like fear. Surgical resonance targeting, Marcus said. We can calibrate the effect precisely enough to destroy specific systems while leaving others intact. Your ship's engines just ceased to exist at the molecular level. The crew is unharmed. Life support is functioning. But that vessel isn't going anywhere. The second cruiser, the Stoneheart, broke formation and accelerated toward the Meridian at full combat speed. Its captain was clearly hoping that closing the distance would make the human ship's evasion impossible. It was a reasonable tactic. It was also exactly what Elena Vasquez had been waiting for. The Meridian didn't run. Instead, it turned directly toward the charging cruiser and accelerated to meet it. The 2 vessels closed on each other at combined speeds that made the watching delegates gasp. at the last possible moment. The Meridian performed a maneuver that violated every principle of conventional physics. It seemed to fold around the stone heart, passing through the space the cruiser occupied without actually colliding with it. In the fraction of a second that the two ships were interpenetrated, the Meridian pulsed again. The stone heart's weapon systems dissolved. Every cannon, every missile tube, every plasma lance simply vanished, leaving clean holes in the hull that automatically sealed themselves to prevent atmosphere loss. "Your crew is alive," Elena's voice announced over the communication channel. "Your life support is intact. Your engines still function. But you no longer have any means of hurting anyone. I suggest you withdraw." The third cruiser, the Emperor's Wrath, stopped its approach. Its captain had seen enough dot in the council chamber. No one moved. The entire engagement had lasted less than 90 seconds. 3 Morvakian battle cruisers, ships that had conquered star systems, had been rendered helpless without a single casualty. "Why?" Admiral Corveth's voice was hoarse. "You had the power to destroy them. Why did you spare them?" Marcus Thorne looked at the Admiral with something that might have been pity. "Because those ships carried 47,000 beings who were just following orders. They didn't decide to attack us. You did? Killing them would have accomplished nothing except proving that humanity is as brutal as everyone else in this galaxy." He stepped to the edge of the petitioner's platform, addressing the entire chamber now. "This is the difference between us. You see power as the ability to destroy. We see it as the ability to choose. Today, we chose to spare your people, Admiral. Remember that when you're deciding what to do next." The silence that followed was unlike anything the Council had experienced in its 11,000-year history. Valeth finally spoke, its liquid form moving slowly, thoughtfully. "Ambassador Thorne, you have demonstrated capabilities that fundamentally alter the balance of power in this galaxy. The Council must deliberate on the implications. However, before we recess, I must ask you directly, what does humanity want?" It was the question Marcus had been waiting for, the question that everything had been building toward. "Humanity wants 3 things," he said. "First, recognition. We are not a primitive species to be monitored and managed. We are a sovereign civilization with the right to determine our own future." Nods came from several delegations. This was reasonable, expected. Second, the immediate cessation of all harvest activities in systems containing pre-spaceflight species. The Venari of Kelos Prime and others like them will be placed under protected status. Any attempt to exploit them will be considered an act of war against Earth. This caused murmuring. The triumvirate's crystals flickered with angry light, but no one objected openly. They had just seen what objecting to humanity might cost them. "And third," Marcus said, and his voice grew quieter, forcing everyone to listen more carefully, "we want to offer something to this council. Something that has never existed in galactic civilization before. What could you possibly offer us?" The triumvirate demanded. "Hope," Marcus said. "Hope that the cycle of conquest and exploitation might finally end. Hope that species can rise and grow without being destroyed by their neighbors. Hope that the galaxy might become something better than it has been." He gestured at the frozen image of the 3 disabled cruisers on the tactical display. "We have power now. Real power. Power that could let us become the greatest conquerors in galactic history if we chose. But we don't choose that. We choose to use our power for protection instead of conquest, for preservation instead of destruction. Why should we believe you?" Thessaly asked. Her tone wasn't hostile, merely curious. "Every empire in history has claimed noble intentions. Because we could have destroyed those ships, and we didn't," Marcus said simply. "Because we could have wiped out the Eternal Dominion with all hands, and instead we gave them time to evacuate. Because we have already made the choice, again and again. to spare lives we could have taken. He paused, looking around the chamber at the thousands of watching faces and forms and beings. Earth is offering to become something new in this galaxy. Not conquerors, not rulers, protectors, any species facing extinction, any world threatened with harvest, any civilization targeted for destruction can call upon us. We will answer, not for tribute or power or submission, simply because helping those in need is what we believe civilized species should do. And if we refuse? Admiral Korvath asked, if we decide that humanity is too dangerous to exist and combine our forces against you. Marcus smiled sadly. Then you will learn that what you saw today was a small demonstration. Our ships can be anywhere in the galaxy within hours. Our weapons can reach any target we choose. And our people are prepared to fight for as long as necessary to defend our right to exist. He let that sink in before continuing. But I hope it won't come to that. I hope that some of you, at least, are tired of the old ways. I hope that some of you want something better for your children and your species and your future. Because if you do, then humanity is ready to help build that better future together. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then slowly, a single delegation rose from their seats. It was the Kethrani. Thessaly coiled upward, her serpentine form catching the light. And she spoke words that would be remembered for millennia. The Kethrani Consortium formally requests dialogue with Earth regarding mutual protection and cooperation. Before the shock could settle, another delegation rose. The Valani, a species of living crystal who had suffered under Morvakian expansion for centuries. The Valani collective seconds this request. Then another, and another. Within 5 minutes, 47 species had risen to express interest in humanity's offer. Marcus Thorne watched it happen with an expression that mixed hope and exhaustion in equal measure. This was the moment they had planned for. This was why humanity had revealed itself. Not to conquer, not to dominate, but to plant a seed that might, someday, grow into something better. The old empires watched in fury and fear. The galaxy was changing around them, and for the first time in 11,000 years, they didn't know how to stop it. Valith called for a recess, and the delegates began to move toward their separate chambers. But everyone knew that nothing would ever be the same. The recess was supposed to last 6 hours. It stretched into 12. Marcus Thorne spent most of that time in a small chamber adjacent to the main hall, fielding communications from Earth. The diplomatic corps was in controlled chaos. The military was on full alert across every human settlement. And in the halls of power, leaders who had spent years preparing for this moment were watching the results of their gamble unfold in real time. The coalition is forming faster than we anticipated. General David Osei reported from Earth Defense Command. He was young for his position, barely 40, but he had been part of the resonance program from its earliest days. 47 species expressed interest. At least 30 of them seemed serious. The Morvakians are furious, Marcus replied. They're going to push for military action. They have to, or they look weak. Can they actually threaten us? Marcus paused before answering. Not directly, but they could make things very difficult for our new friends. The Kethrani trade routes pass through Morvakian-controlled space. The Valani homeworld is within striking distance of 3 Morvakian battle groups. If we're going to protect these species, we need to be prepared to actually protect them. The fleet is ready, David said. Say the word, and we can have ships in position within hours. Not yet. Let's see how the vote goes first. The vote. Everything came down to the vote. Under council rules, any species could be expelled from galactic civilization by a 2/3 majority. It had happened before to species that had committed atrocities or violated fundamental treaty. Ease, The Morvakians were pushing for exactly that, arguing that humanity's technology was too dangerous, too destabilizing, too threatening to the established order. They might get the votes. Many species feared change more than they feared oppression. Better the devil they knew than the uncertainty humanity represented. But there were also species who had suffered under the old order. Species who had watched their neighbors harvested and their children enslaved. Species who saw in humanity's offer something they had never dared to hope for. The outcome was genuinely uncertain. Thessaly found Marcus during the 10th hour of the recess. The Kethrani diplomat moved with a grace that made her seem to flow rather than slither, her scales catching light in patterns that suggested meaning to those who knew how to read. Them. You've started something dangerous, she said without preamble. I know. The Morvakians have been building alliances for hours. They're promising favors, threatening sanctions, calling in ancient debts. They want humanity expelled and isolated before your technology can spread. Can they get 2/3? Thessaly's body coiled in what Marcus had learned to recognize as uncertainty. It will be close. Very close. The swing votes are species who fear the Morvakians, but also fear change. They need a reason to believe that humanity's protection is real, not just words. What kind of reason? A demonstration. Not of your weapons, of your commitment. Something that proves you will actually protect those who trust you, even at cost to yourselves. Marcus considered this. What do you suggest? The Velani homeworld. The Morvakians have a battle group positioned nearby, officially for training exercises. Everyone knows they're really there to intimidate the Velani into voting against you. If you could remove that threat, double quotes, without casualties? Ideally. The Morvakians would use any deaths as propaganda against you. Marcus nodded slowly. It was a risk. Projecting force before the vote could be seen as threatening the Council's sovereignty. But doing nothing while the Morvakians intimidated potential allies would make humanity look weak. He touched his communication device. Captain Vasquez, I have a mission for you. 4 hours later, 3 human ships emerged from hyperspace near the Velani homeworld. The Morvakian battle group, 12 heavy cruisers and their support vessels, had been holding position for 3 days. Their presence was a message. Vote against humanity or face consequences. The Velani had been considering withdrawing their support entirely. Then the human ships arrived. They were small compared to the Morvakian vessels. Diplomatic couriers, officially. Unarmed, according to their registered specifications. They positioned themselves directly between the battle group and the Velani planet. Human vessels. You are entering Morvakian operational space. The commander of the battle group was a being of stone and fire named Kolvith, younger cousin to Admiral Korvath. Withdraw immediately or face consequences. The response came from the lead human ship, a vessel called the Horizon. Its captain was a woman named Amara Okonkwo, daughter of the scientist who had first theorized about resonance technology. Morvakian commander, you are conducting intimidation operations against a species considering alliance with Earth. This is unacceptable. The Velani are within our sphere of influence. Our presence here is legitimate. Your presence here is a threat. Withdraw your battle group to the edge of the system, and we will have no conflict. Kolvith's response was a bark of flame-tinged laughter. You have 3 small ships. I have 12 cruisers. Do you truly believe you can dictate terms to me? I believe, Amara said calmly, that you saw what happened to your cousin's fleet at the council station. I believe you know what these ships can do. And I believe that you need to decide right now whether protecting Morvakian pride is worth losing 12 cruisers and their crews. Silence stretched across the communication channel. You wouldn't dare, Kolvith finally said. The council vote hasn't happened yet. Attacking us now would turn every neutral species against you. Who said anything about attacking? Amara replied, I said you would lose your cruisers. I didn't say I would destroy them. Before Kolveth could respond, all 3 human ships pulsed simultaneously. Across the 12 Morvakian cruisers, weapon systems began to fail. Not exploding, not burning, simply ceasing to exist, molecule by molecule, leaving clean gaps in the ship's structures. Within 30 seconds, the entire battle group was disarmed. Your ships are intact, Amara announced. Your crews are alive. Your engines and life support are functional. But you no longer have the ability to threaten anyone. I suggest you return to Morvakian space and explain to your superiors what happened here. Kolveth's response was rage-filled and incoherent. But there was nothing he could do. His fleet had been neutered without a single shot being fired, without a single casualty on either side. The Valani watched from their homeworld. So did the representatives of 40 other species who had been considering their votes. News of the incident reached the council chamber within the hour. When the vote finally came, 18 hours after the recess began, the result was not close at all, but the motion to expel humanity failed with only 31% support. 62% of species voted against expulsion. The remaining 7% abstained. More importantly, 64 species formally requested to open negotiations with Earth regarding mutual protection agreements. The old order had cracked dot in the council chamber. As the results were announced, Admiral Korvath rose from his seat. His flames burned with fury that made nearby delegates edge away. This is not over, he declared. The Morvakian Empire does not accept this result. We do not recognize humanity's claim to protect other species. And we will not rest until this threat to galactic civilization is eliminated. Marcus Thorne, still standing on the petitioner's platform, met the Admiral's gaze without flinching. I hope you'll reconsider, he said quietly, because the alternative is a war you cannot win. And I really don't want to watch more people die for nothing. The Admiral's response was to turn and storm from the chamber, his delegation following behind him. War hadn't been declared, but everyone knew it was coming. Humanity had won the first battle. The harder ones were still ahead. 3 weeks passed after the council vote. In that time, the galaxy transformed in ways that historians would study for millennia. 64 species had requested protection agreements with Earth. 31 had already signed formal treaties. Trade routes that had existed for thousands of years were being redrawn. Alliances that had seemed permanent were dissolving overnight. And in the dark spaces between stars, the Morvakian Empire was preparing for war. Marcus Thorne stood on the observation deck of the Meridian, watching the stars wheel slowly past. They were in transit back to Earth, carrying the signed treaties that would formalize humanity's new role in galactic affairs. Behind him, the door opened quietly. You're not sleeping, Alana Vasquez said. It wasn't a question. Neither are you. The captain moved to stand beside him. She had changed in the weeks since the council confrontation. There were new lines around her eyes, a weight in her posture that hadn't been there before. The woman who had dissolved the mightiest warship in the galaxy was discovering that destroying things was easier than building them. Intelligence reports coming in, she said. The Morvakians are massing. 300 ships. They're not being subtle about it. They don't need to be subtle. They're making a point, showing the galaxy that they're not afraid of us. Are they? Marcus considered the question. Some of them, the smart ones. But fear isn't enough. They need to actually test us, to prove to themselves and everyone else that we're not invincible. Otherwise, their empire crumbles from within. So they're going to attack. Probably. The question is where and when, and whether we can stop them without creating the war we've been trying to prevent. Elena was quiet for a moment. There's something else in the intelligence reports. Something strange? Strange how? Movement near the Anthony territories. Marcus turned to look at her. The Anthony were a mystery even in a galaxy full of mysteries. They had been building civilizations when the oldest stars in the current era were still young. They had withdrawn from galactic politics 3,000 years ago, disgusted by the endless cycles of conquest and collapse. Their representatives hadn't spoken in the council chamber for millennia. What kind of movement? One of their vessels, heading toward the council station. The first time they've done anything like that in thousands of years. Before Marcus could respond, the Meridian's communication system chimed with a priority alert. The face that appeared on the screen was General David Osei, and his expression was grim. "Ambassador, we have a situation. The Morvakian fleet has just entered the Kelos system." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Kelos, where it had all started. Where the Venari still waited under humanity's promised protection. How many ships? All of them. 312 vessels. They're not attacking yet, just holding position. But they've broadcast a demand. What do they want? David's jaw tightened. They want you, personally. They say if you surrender yourself to face charges for the destruction of the Eternal Dominion, they'll withdraw. Otherwise, they'll consider our protection of the Venari Void and proceed with the harvest. The observation deck was silent, except for the hum of the ship's systems. They're forcing us to choose. Elena said quietly, "Your life for 3 billion Venari." "They're testing us," Marcus corrected. "They know we won't surrender. They want us to destroy their fleet, create martyrs, prove that humanity is just another predator species willing to slaughter for power. Then what do we do?" Marcus stared at the stars for a long moment. Then he smiled, very slightly. "We do something they're not expecting. We give them a third option." The council chamber had never been so full. Every species with representation had sent delegates. Every gallery was packed. Every display surface showed feeds from the Kelos system, where 300 Morvakian warships faced a single human vessel. The Meridian had arrived alone. Marcus Thorne stood on the petitioner's platform once again. But this time, he had not come to defend humanity. He had come to change everything. "I am here," he announced, "to answer the charges against me." Admiral Korvath's image appeared on a display screen, broadcast from his flagship in the Kelos system. "You surrender? I offer myself for judgment, not by the Morvakian Empire, by the Council itself. If this body finds me guilty of crimes against galactic civilization, I will accept whatever punishment is decreed, including death." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. This was unprecedented. No individual had ever submitted to council judgment on behalf of their entire species. "The council has no jurisdiction over this matter," Korvath growled. "The crimes were committed against the Triumvirate. We are allies of the Triumvirate. Justice belongs to us." "The crime you accuse me of," Marcus said calmly, "is using unprecedented technology against a military vessel. If that is a crime, then the council must decide. If it is not a crime, then your attack on the Venari is unprovoked aggression." Valith stirred on the speaker's platform. "The ambassador raises a valid point. The council must rule on whether humanity's actions at Kelos constitute a crime under galactic law." "This is a delay tactic," Korvath snarled. "The humans are stalling for time." "Perhaps," Valith said, "but the law is clear. If a ruling is requested, it must be provided." Before the debate could continue, something happened that silenced everyone. A new vessel appeared on the tactical displays. It had emerged from hyperspace near the council station, moving with a grace that made every other ship look crude and mechanical. Its hull seemed to be made of solidified light. Its configuration matched no known design. An Anthony vessel, The being that appeared on the communication channels was not physical in any sense most species understood. It was thought-given form, crystallized light shaped by consciousness that had existed before the current stars were born. "We would speak," the Anthony said. Its voice seemed to come from everywhere, and nowhere at once. The chamber went absolutely silent. Valeth bowed its liquid form in a gesture of respect that the speaker had never shown to any other being. "The Anthony are recognized. What do you wish to say?" "We have watched. For 3,000 years, we have watched your galaxy destroy itself in cycles of conquest and collapse. We withdrew because we saw no hope that anything would change. The same patterns, repeated endlessly. The strong consuming the weak. Civilizations rising and falling. Nothing new. Nothing better." The ancient being paused, and its form shifted in ways that seemed to convey profound emotion. "Then humanity arrived. We watched them too. We saw them discover power that could have made them the greatest conquerors in galactic history. And we saw them choose differently." The Anthony's form brightened, filling the chamber with light that felt almost warm. They had power to destroy the Eternal Dominion utterly. They gave the crew time to escape. They could have annihilated the Morvakian fleet at the Council Station. They disabled it instead. They could have ignored the Venari and remained safe in their hidden strength. They chose to risk everything to protect beings they had never met. This is why we speak now. Not because humanity is strong. Because they are restrained. Because they prove that power does not require cruelty. Because they show that the cycle can be broken. The Anthony turned its attention to Admiral Korvath's image on the screen. "Withdraw your fleet, Morvakian. The Venari are protected. Not by humanity alone. By us." The implications crashed through the chamber like a physical force. The Anthony, the most ancient and powerful species in the galaxy, had just declared themselves humanity's allies. Korvath's flames flickered with uncertainty for the first time. "You cannot interfere. You withdrew from galactic affairs. We withdrew because we saw no hope. Humanity has given us hope, and so we return." The Admiral's face twisted with rage and fear. 300 ships were meaningless against Anthony technology. The fleet began to withdraw before he even gave the order. Self-preservation overriding pride. In the council chamber, Marcus Thorne felt the weight of weeks finally lifting from his shoulders. It wasn't over. There would be more challenges, more conflicts, more difficult choices ahead. But in this moment, something fundamental had shifted, the Anthony being turned to address the entire chamber one final time. "The galaxy stands at a crossroads. You can continue the old ways, conquest and exploitation, and the endless cycle of rise and fall. Or you can follow humanity's example. Choose differently. Build something better." It paused, and its light seemed to intensify. "We have waited 3,000 years for this moment. We will wait no longer. The new age begins now." The being faded from the displays, but its words lingered in the silence. Marcus Thorne looked around the council chamber at the thousands of species represented there. Some were afraid. Some were angry. But many, more than he had dared hope, were looking at him with something that might have been wonder. "Well," he said quietly, "I suppose we have work to do." Thessaly's laugh broke the tension. "Indeed we do, Ambassador. Indeed we do." Somewhere in the Kalos system, 3 billion Venari looked up at stars that no longer threatened them. Somewhere in the void, the Morvakian fleet retreated to lick its wounds and plan its next move. And somewhere in the chambers of power, across 1,000 worlds, beings who had known only conquest for millennia began to wonder if another way was possible. The revolution had begun. Humanity had come to the stars, expecting to find their place in an ancient order. Instead, they had shattered it. And from the pieces, something new was being born.